You are listening to KC Sports Network, the #1 podcast network for today's Kansas City sports fans. With former players from your favorite teams, informed perspectives, and former insiders, this is the place for you. KC Sports Network is proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
What is up? Welcome into this week's edition of KCSNU Kickoff here on the KCSNU YouTube page. This is the only place where you can find this show with myself and Matt Lane. Matt, how are you doing this week?
Listen, we adopted Washington Huskies last week, and they came off a tough loss against UCLA. You know, the game was entertaining. That's all I can promise with the Huskies this year. They will be entertaining. That we look to rebound this year. We put our foot back to the grindstone. We brought our lunch pail back to work. We together are getting back at it this week with, an easy game this week. So hopefully our Huskies get back on track before they get into the meat of this Pac-12 schedule.
Absolutely. Good to get that game out of the way. We'll talk about the team that they played last week here in a little bit, but it might be pretty good. I said it before the podcast. Might be a pretty good football team. But we'll get to that more. As always, we like to start off with our one big thing. Maddie, my one big thing is our picks. I'll probably always talk about our picks on this one big thing. I got to go back. I got to pull up the note. Thought I'd be prepared for this. Got to pull up the note of how we performed last week. It looks like, Matt, that you went 2 and wait, are these the right picks? Yeah, no, these are the right picks. 2 and 4 and 1. 2, 4 and 1.
I demand a recount.
You had the Tulsa push at 10. I had a push, so we both have pushes in our records now. How about that? I went 4 and 3. So Matt, your record now is 11, 13 and 1.
Right.
My record is 19, 11 and 1 as well. So yeah, I finally hit the double digit on the loss column. Listen, I was trying to get to 20 dubs before I got double digit losses. Didn't happen. I was close. Was very close. But yeah, those are our picks from last week.
I'm just trying to pull up into even. I just want to, I just gotta get back to you. This is why I don't live in a betting state. I purposely move away from betting states from now on, so I can't even be tempted for stuff like this because we're riding a cold streak right now. We got to get hot here down the stretch because this has not been a good 2 weeks for me.
Everybody goes through cold stretches, but it's how you respond to the cold stretch that matters. I'm coming out of a very cold stretch of actual gambling where I was like 1 for my last 15. You look at my spreadsheet, bunch of L's right in a row. Never good to see. But Maddie, you've got some. What's your one big thing you want to talk about this week?
We're early on in the season, but it's it's time. We can start kicking around the conversation. Some Heisman hopefuls, Heisman favorites. Betting wise, I'm sure CJ Stroud is at the top of most odds right now. Would be my guess. He would be my first guy. Ohio State's playing really good. Competition isn't great, but he's clearly kind of been the best quarterback of the bunch. I'm going to put Bryce Young at 2. I think that the Alabama team kind of had some stuff rolling. They've won every game. He's been a huge part of it. Without Bryce Young, I know this isn't exactly how the Heisman Trophy works, but without Bryce Young, that Alabama team is not competing for a national title at all. So that still matters. I think a lot of people have Caleb Williams next, but I don't think so. I think that there's too much up and down in his game. Give me Hendon Hooker, Tennessee quarterback at number 3. And honestly, I think he's closer to 1 than he is 4 right now. I think he is much closer to 1 than he is 4. Hendon Hooker essentially is the Tennessee Volunteers football team, along with Josh Heupel, their coach. 4, we will go Caleb Williams there. And then 5, I'm sorry, Kansas fans, Jalen Daniels is not in my top 5 anymore. I think he did not have his best game for their best win. And I think that kind of stuff matters. Give me Brock Bowers. That's right. Tight end over a quarterback for the Heisman favorite. There's zero chance he gets there. He would get the Will Anderson treatment where it's like, hey, we know you won't win, but come hang out because you're clearly the best player in the country. You just don't play quarterback. But yeah, that's where I kind of sit with the Heisman right now. If you had a vote, Tucker, who would you give the Heisman to right now? If college football just ceased to exist forever and you had to decide the final Heisman Trophy winner of all time right now, who's getting it?
Michael Penix. No, I'm just kidding.
It wasn't that game against UCLA. Yikes.
I know it's tough. I think the announcers in that UCLA Washington game gave him the Heisman like 4 times. I don't know if you watched it with the broadcast on. They were very high on Michael Penix, rightfully so. He played very well leading into that game.
Coming in, he would have made this list. If I did this last
Yeah.
week, he would have been on the list right there with Hendon Hooker. I think two guys that are underrated that are kind of were willing their team through their offenses to be undefeated at the time. Just he had some awful decisions in that game though.
But for me, it's probably C.J. Stroud. I think that's probably who it is. This award, it's kind of frustrating that it goes to basically just quarterbacks, right? As you mentioned, Brock Bowers is like the best player in the country, and it's like not close. He's plus on our friends at DraftKings Sportsbook. I just saw him on here as I was scrolling here, plus 15,000. So if you want to place a bet down on him to win the Heisman, I wouldn't recommend it because I don't know if it's that strong of a bet. It could net you some big money. That's 150 to 1, I believe, is what those odds are. But looking at the DraftKings odds, CJ Stroud plus 160, Caleb Williams has the second highest odds at plus 500, Bryce Young at plus 900, Hendon Hooker 1200, Blake Corum. Am I saying that last name right? I believe that's how you say his last name.
Yes, you are.
Plus 1800, Stetson Bennett plus 1800, Adrian Martinez, the same odds at plus 1800. Jalen Daniels get a little local flair here, plus 2800. So they're saying Adrian Martinez has a better chance than Jalen Daniels at this point of winning the Heisman. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I don't think
that
either of them will
changed
win the Heisman
last week though. I think that changed last week.
fair.
I imagine Jalen Daniels would have been higher before the Iowa State game. And it's just that's how reactive this award is, especially this early in the year. But for Kansas, they come off essentially their biggest win of the year versus Iowa State, and that just wasn't his best game. So, I'm sure that had a huge impact. Whereas Adrian Martinez, back-to-back good wins for K-State, in which he's looked actively really good during them. So it's a what have you done lately for me award when we're talking about it right now. So, I get it with Adrian Martinez being there, but also I ask, did they watch Tulane?
Yeah, that game was tough. I had the Adrian Martinez under for passing yards in that game. Adrian came through for me in that one. But I think that's really interesting to look at this. I mean, other names that we talked about, Will Anderson, kind of high on this list, plus 4,000 as a defensive player. That's interesting. Maddie, you and I had a decently length conversation about Sam Hartman last week at the end of last week. He's at plus 4,500. Cam Rising plus 550, Michael Penix plus 6,000. I'm curious to where that line has kind of moved for Michael Penix, what it was at before then and where it is now, kind of. But yeah, lots of guys. I think this is one of those years where, I mean, CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, Caleb Williams, Hendon Hooker. I think the group of guys is there. I don't know how many guys like sneak in to your final voting. They take 5 or they take 4.
I think
Or
it kind of
6.
depends. Isn't it? I think it's based around how many votes you get overall. So
That's
it
true.
changes from year to year. I think you have to have a certain base level of votes. I think it's pretty clear if Bryce Young can come back and play. I don't think we're talking about the Alabama game, so I'll put it here.
No.
If he can play this week against Texas A&M, I think that goes a long way. He will always have a chance with the SEC schedule to get that quote unquote Heisman moment and get himself up there. CJ Stroud's schedule isn't near as difficult. It's it'll be a little bit harder for him to have the moment, but I just think he's been so steady and good. But yeah, it's going to be all the big name quarterbacks will make there. And like I said, maybe they'll throw a bone to a Brock Bowers or a Will Anderson is like, hey, come hang out and join this award. So it's not just the best quarterback award. That's why Will Anderson was there last year. They might do that again as well. At least the voters will. Because I think as a voter, you only vote for the top 3, or maybe it's 5, but you only vote for a limited amount. So a lot of people will sneak a non-quarterback in there just to make it look better. And if you have one guy that clearly gets it, then he has a chance to get invited, I think.
We do have a Heisman voter on the network. I don't know if you know that. Gabe DeArmond has a vote for Heisman. So I'll ask him what his kind of process is about that. But yeah, Maddie, I like that. I like looking at the Heisman. We are what is it, week 6 already in the college football season?
We're cruising, buddy. We're cruising.
We are definitely cruising along. I know after this week, Missouri has an off week, has a bye week. Kansas State has an off week. Big week for us, as well as we have our KCSN golf tournament. Maddie, you'll be in Kansas City. I don't know what we're going to do for that show. That's something that I just thought about right now. But we've got some local games to talk about. Kansas is playing, I believe, Oklahoma next week. All things that we can look ahead to, but right now let's talk about the college game day game.
The big
College
one.
game day came to Lawrence, Kansas for the first time ever for football. They've been there plenty of times for basketball. They came there. This game is an 11 a.m. kickoff, I believe, on Fox Sports 1, yes. TCU comes to town after absolutely throttling Oklahoma and looking like a really good football team. What are your thoughts on this matchup? This is a top 20 matchup. TCU
20.
in Kansas. If I would have told you that week 1 of the college football season that TCU Kansas would be an AP top 20 matchup,
Ooh. No
I would be all
chance.
wrong. Yeah, you wouldn't have thought that.
Okay, this is a game. This is a fun game. This game, I'm not going to let last week fool me about Kansas's defense. I think Iowa State left a lot of points on the board. I think Matt Campbell doesn't actively try to score points, and I think Iowa State's quarterback is really bad at football. So you combine those things, and I think Kansas's defense put out their best performance of the year, but I still don't think it's good. I think TCU's offense might actually be pretty good. Looking at Sonny Dykes' teams in the past, going back to SMU, he usually gets offense clicking. So yeah, Oklahoma blew a lot of coverages in that game, but TCU was still cruising. TCU was still going. So I think there's gonna be a lot of points in this one. Like this one is going to be a shootout through and through. And I mean, I'm excited for it. It's not very often where you should have a game like this where these two teams are going at it, going back and forth.
Yeah, I agree. Both of these high-powered offenses. I was just looking up. See the kind of points per game for both of these offenses. Now, Maddie, is his name Garrett Riley, who the offensive coordinator is for
Yes.
the TCU Horned Frogs? Riley, that last name might sound familiar to some people. It's a brother of Lincoln Riley, who absolutely torched the old Sooners, who Lincoln Riley obviously coached for last season. But yeah, I think this game is going to be really interesting. I think the Kansas defense is pretty solid, but I think you're right, Maddie. I do think that like a lot of that game was what Iowa State didn't do.
Right.
And like trusting a college kicker to kind of kick that field goal after he, doinked a couple off of an upright. There's some very questionable decisions by Matt Campbell in that game. Nevertheless, I do think Kansas was the better coach team. I don't know how many times you could say that about a Kansas team where you can leave a Big 12 game and say, yeah, they were the better coach team. You can say that this year now because I think Lance Leipold really has them running in the right direction. As a Missouri fan, that's not very fun for me to say. But I think that like where that program setting is good. If he can stay there for a long haul, that's good for Kansas. But yeah, I think this is going to be a really fun game. There's going to be a lot of points. I know that like Kansas likes to pride themselves, likes their defense. They have a good defense.
Do they?
I mean, I don't think it's terrible.
Oh,
I think allow a decent points though.
I think Kansas defense is bad. And I think Iowa State also, like, I agree with you that Kansas was the better coach team. Now, I think Lance made some cowardly moves with some of his punts. He probably shouldn't have. He allowed Iowa State, whose offense wasn't as consistent in terms of like driving down the field. I think he let them stay in the game. But the big thing was watching this Iowa State game. It finally happened to where I've been waiting for it all year. It's something I just wanted to keep an eye on. I think Kansas's lack of athleticism and just raw strength showed up. I think Iowa State pushed them around in the trenches a little bit on both sides of the ball, really. But I mean, Iowa State was running out of shotgun on every short yardage situation and easily picking up the first down. I think there were some moments where you could just tell that Iowa State, who isn't the most athletic program in all of college football, was able to out-athlete, able to out-muscle Kansas as they're still on their upswing in terms of recruiting and getting talent in the door. TCU should be another step up from there. So one round of applause for Kansas for winning a game. I think I said after this game, there's no more excuses allowed. And that is true. Kansas is a good football team. I just think going up to TCU now, who I also think is a good football team, it's another step up in athleticism. So like the Kansas is just going to continue to climb the rungs, right? They're just going to continue a steeper and steeper and more difficult climb against better competition. I think you started to see some weaknesses though last week. I wonder if that does finally like peak this week against an actively good team that just belongs in the top 25, whereas Iowa State did not.
Yeah, I'm not sold on Iowa State. I don't think that they're a good program at all.
Going after the program.
Sorry, Iowa State fans. I looked this up. Scoring offense-wise, TCU in points per game, second in the country in scoring offense, just behind Ohio State and Heisman frontrunner C.J. Stroud. Put some respect on Max Duggan's name. 48.5 points per game. Kansas Jayhawks 13th in the country with 41.6 points behind our Huskies. Yeah, so I think this is going to be obviously high-scoring game. The team defenses I'll look up after you get done talking about the players to watch, your prospects to watch, but high-scoring game is I think on the menu here.
I mean, the over/under set at 69. Nice.
Nice,
So
yes.
that's already fun. Prospects to watch. So we're gonna go back. We're gonna do TCU offense versus KU defense. I would shout out Kobe Bryant again after a great game last week, but I put him on there. He's an underclassman anyway. He can't come out. So we're gonna go Quentin Johnston, wide receiver for TCU. A lot of people had high hopes for him entering this year, and he hasn't really done a lot this year. Now he's received extra attention from defenses, but his most receiving yards on the year is only 41. For a guy that was considered a potential first-round pick in the NFL draft, he's only had 41 yards as a season high right now. What's he going to be able to do against this Kansas secondary? And Kobe Bryant will be there. I think Kenny Logan, the safety for Kansas, kind of one of their defensive leaders, has made a lot of good plays this year. Can he continue to do that? I think Kenny Logan had a pass breakup on Xavier Hutchinson last week in the end zone that actually would have given Iowa State the lead. He came over on a double move, was able to knock the ball out. Can he do that again this week? Will Quentin Johnston finally get it going? I think those are two guys that will get drafted. I assume Johnson will go a lot higher up, but he's got to kind of start picking it up as the year goes on than Kenny Logan will. Those are two guys that should be playing in the NFL, be playing on Sundays within the next couple seasons.
Kansas's defense allows 24 points per game. TCU's allows 22. I assume those numbers will rise after this game. Interesting stat nugget here before we get into the picks. Maddie. Maggie's who I do the Mizzou show with. KU has covered in its last 8 games, and TCU is 2-0 as road favorites this season. The line is set TCU minus 6.5. 6.5 is one of those lines where it's like, okay, they win by 7, they cover, but anything less than a touchdown, it's KU cover. KU 4-0 against the spread. TCU also 4-0 against the spread.
That's a lot of points. That's a lot of points to lay on the road versus a hot team, versus a team that just simply isn't losing. Kansas has won a lot of people, a lot. Anybody that has decided to saddle up with Kansas has won a lot of money this year. That's a lot of points, but I don't care. Give me the Horned Frogs. I'm taking TCU. I've been saying it. I think there comes a point where Kansas's talent, athleticism, and their talent, their physicality will not be able to match their opponents. I think we've been drifting closer and closer to that as they've stepped up in competition. I think TCU is good. I think TCU has more talented players for now. Give Lance another year or two and that gap closes, but I'm going to say TCU wins this one. Maybe it is only a single touchdown. Maybe it's something like 9 points. I think it's still a close, fun game, but I will take TCU and lay the points even on the road.
I did misspoke earlier. Kansas is 5-0 against the spread. Maddie, you're very compelling because when I first started, I was like, I'm going to take Kansas. I'm going to take Kansas 6.5, a lot of points on the road. But nothing would be worse than me watching a Kansas TCU game wanting Kansas to score, wanting Kansas to keep the game close. Nothing would be worse for me in my mental state if I do that. So I have to think of myself here. This is a selfish pick. I'm also going to go with TCU 6.5 just because I don't want to put myself in the place where I'm relying on Kansas to score a touchdown. Maybe that is a selfish pick on my part, but that's my thoughts. As a Missouri fan, I don't want to get into a spot where I'm wishing that.
Both of us are anti-Jayhawking right now.
I know. Views are going to tank. Our views are going to tank. All right, let's go lead on to the piece de resistance of this game slate, the best game of the local slate. I'm kidding. It's Missouri and Florida, the only matchup in the local slate that doesn't feature a ranked team. This is an 11 a.m. kickoff at the Swamp. Weird things happen in the Swamp at 11 a.m. Maddie, what are your first impressions of this game?
I don't have a lot for this game. These two teams are the same. They're both not good. Just not good. I okay. In this game, I think Drink has quietly gotten Missouri to play hard and play a little bit better the past couple weeks. I still don't think it's a good team. I still think they have significant flaws, but he's got them playing hard. He's got them going out there caring and trying, and they figured out at least how to be competitive versus quality competition. Florida is so up and down. I don't think Billy Napier is ever going to be the kind of coach that is going to let his team win big unless they're playing a complete nobody. That's the scary part about me for this. I don't know. I don't think either team really wants to win by a lot of points. They're not going to make decisions to win by a lot of points, nor do I think they have a coach or the players to do so. So I think this game's going to be ugly. I think it's going to be a gross game where a lot of things just look bad. That's what I expect. Just a bad looking football game here.
We'll probably talk about this later about LSU fans not liking 11 a.m. kickoffs. Florida fans don't like 11 a.m. kickoffs either. I don't know if you've seen an 11 a.m. kickoff in the swamp. It's dead. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how Drinkwitz gets his guys up for that. It was easy to get them up for Georgia, right? Number one team coming to town. You got a not quite sold out, but almost sold out Furrow Field. Then you got the Georgia players walking through the stretching lines before, just being disrespectful. You can get up for that and take advantage of that opportunity. How is Drink going to motivate them for an 11 a.m. kickoff against a Florida team that is, you literally have no idea what team you're going to face? You could face one of the best teams in the country or literally one of the worst teams. That's just the Billy Napier experience at Florida. I believe I saw a tweet that the last time Drinkwitz faced off against Billy Napier was when he was with App State. It was in what do they play in the Sun Belt, right? Is that?
Yep.
It was in the Sun Belt championship game, the night that he met with Missouri to talk about becoming the head coach of the Missouri football Tigers. So, Maddie, who are you watching for in this game prospect-wise?
It was impressive against Georgia. Missouri's defensive line played well. I mean, they were slashing into a lot of gaps. They were crashing stuff down. We've talked about Elijah McGuire before. We've mentioned his name, but Shajon Jeffcoat, the other defensive end, I think he's got a little bit more name value, I guess, than McGuire does. I think McGuire's a little bit better, but Jeffcoat's got a little bit more name value. So kind of watching him going up against Richard Gorridge, offensive tackle of Florida. I'm probably saying his name incorrectly, but he's on the Senior Bowl watch list. I've seen Jim Nagy talk about him a couple times. He's actually looked really good. He's been tested a few times this year through Florida's early schedule. He plays left tackle for Florida. He's looked pretty good. He's a big guy. He looks like he has the adequate length that you want out of an offensive tackle. So it's just another matchup, but it's really kind of riding the hot hand of Missouri's defensive line, seeing what they're going to do against a Florida offensive line that honestly is playing pretty good so far this year. Like, that has been one of the things that has not been much of an issue for Florida is the offensive line. So just kind of watching those two units go at it. I don't think we're looking at high-end prospects on either side here, but at least guys that will get drafted will round out some draft rooms on, late day 2, probably more likely day 3.
Mizzou 3-0 against the spread. No, that can't be right. I must not have changed it. I think they're 3-1 against the spread. No, they covered. So they're 4. I've got to look that up. I must not have filled that out properly. The spread is at 10.5, Maddie. What I found a nugget for this game, very interesting. Mizzou hasn't covered in its last 7 road games in October. And Mizzou's also 0-3 as a dog. Line has gotten as low as -11, kind of settled at 10.5. What are your thoughts on this game?
10.5's a lot. I don't trust either team, so I'm taking Missouri at the points. Like, I'm taking Missouri in 10.5 because I don't trust either team to win by much at all. So give me the points with Missouri. I will say this though: if Florida comes out and wins by 25 points, will I be floored? Absolutely not. There's no way I can lay that right now, the way that team has looked anytime they have played competent opponents.
Florida is 3-2 against the spread. Missouri is 3-2. I just forgot the 2 when I typed it in. I must have put a 0. So 3-2 for both of these teams against the spread. Maddie, I agree with you on your logic. 10.5 is a lot, especially in a game that's 11 a.m. kickoff. It's one of those games where I think that Florida thinks that they can kind of just like show up and beat Mizzou, right? I think that's kind of the feeling around like Mizzou games now, is like teams can just like show up and beat them. They've turned into a Vanderbilt for a lot of teams on the schedule for the SEC. I'm curious to see how they respond after emptying the tank against Georgia. But I think that this game could be a close one. I think that I think it's a closer than 10.5 points though. So I'm taking Mizzou in the points as well. Not a shocker there, probably, if you know me. So let's move on to the final local game of our slate here. Kansas State travels to Iowa State. Evening kickoff, 6:30 p.m. in Ames, Iowa. That's on ESPNU. You can check that one out. Farmageddon, as it is commonly called, and it's been a good rivalry week here on KCSNU between the Kansas State and Iowa State fans. What do you like in this matchup, Maddie?
So I didn't know there was like this budding rivalry of Kansas State and Iowa State. I didn't know that this game had its own nickname. I'm a little removed from the area now, living out in North Carolina, but kudos to you guys for coming up with a name and finding a way to get riled up about K-State and Iowa State.
Yeah.
Because even though I think K-State's a quality football team, if not a good football team, I don't know how you get up for this particular game. You have two teams that literally just want to run the ball. Both quarterbacks, while there's been some success of them throwing the football, you would really feel a lot better if neither quarterback ever attempted a pass, except for off play action. They were wide open, right? Like that's just the level of quarterback passing that you were getting the majority out of the time from both of these guys. So it's just like a smash mouth, you would assume defensive heavy football game that definitely appeals as a fun watch, but like, I don't know. I don't know about this one in terms of making high on my priority of watch list. Like I said, if you're a big K-State or Iowa State fan, this is a rivalry to you. I get it. But this is not a mass appealing game when you have an Adrian Martinez versus Deckard is his name, the quarterback for Iowa State. Yeah, and not a high priority game for me after what I have seen from them two throwing the ball this year. I would smash the under on whatever it set out of this game.
I believe Hunter Deckers, I told you this yesterday, he was an Elite 11 quarterback.
Yeah.
People were very, very highly anticipated quarterback after obviously Brock Purdy left. We got a chance to sit down with Brock Purdy at the Shrine Bowl. Good guy. I really like Brock Purdy a lot. I'm trying to look up his rivals. Here you go. I think he was a 4-star.
He might be. This is all I got to say.
Yeah.
Watch him play, right? Watch him play. He purposely doesn't set his feet to throw the ball. Like he is purposely sliding his feet from under him as he throws the ball, and it impacts every other throw he makes. Like this was part of my thing for the Kansas game. I think he left plenty of throws on the field because he actively took his feet and moved them out from under him to throw the football like he was trying to turn in a double play at shortstop for no reason, though, for absolutely no reason. Like there was so much about his throwing motion that was bad. Adrian Martinez somehow has thrown well the past 2 weeks, but when you watch him other times, it really looks like a struggle. Like I can't trust a team that doesn't have competent quarterback play. That's where I've gotten with most football. And I don't trust either one of these teams to field quality quarterback play on any given week.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Hunter Deckers was recruited by Kansas State, and Colin Klein chose to go to Iowa State, obviously. The spread is 1 point. Maddie, I jumped the gun because I need you to talk about your prospects to watch. I'm just excited to talk about the 1 point spread, but who are you got your eyes on?
So we've talked a lot about K-State this year. It's been a lot of defense heavy stuff, some Deuce Vaughn. How about Malik Knowles, wide receiver for K-State? Athletic guy, good build, maybe isn't always maximized in that offense, which is fair. That is fine. There's plenty of wide receivers that come out of run heavy offenses in college that have success at the NFL level. So Malik Knowles is a guy that, I just kind of have my eye on. I think he flashes enough every single week to be intrigued. You really need him to go to the combine and kind of light it up, I think, to really pick up some steam. But then across from him, senior cornerback for Iowa State, Anthony Johnson, bigger, longer guy. He's able to play physical at the line of scrimmage. He should be able to at least have the size to match up with Malik Knowles. I don't know if he has the athleticism. That's kind of what you're waiting to see out of him. So if K-State is forced to drop back and throw it, what does that matchup look like? So I think you get a quality game from Knowles or even just a big explosive play here and there. That could go a long way in helping them kind of open up that offense versus a stout Iowa State defense.
Iowa State has failed to cover versus an AP ranked team in its last 6 games against the top 25 teams. So very interesting stat there. Kansas State 3-1 as a favorite. This is the first time They've been a road favorite this year. Only their second road game of the season, coming in week 6, only having 2 road games. You get a home heavy early schedule. Like I mentioned before, Kansas State favored by a point. I was kind of surprised by this line, Maddie, but I can see where the bookmakers are coming from with this line. What are your thoughts on this pick?
I don't get this line at all. K-State, I put it all on K-State. It's in Ames, I guess. Matt Campbell only plays close games. I think K-State's clearly the better team. If I'm not even having to lay a field goal, please, taking K-State for sure. It might be close, it might be ugly, but this does not seem like the kind of game that Kansas State's going to come out and lose. Would have said the same thing about Tulane. Don't get me wrong. I just don't think this is the kind of game that the more talented team of two teams that have to play relatively the same way is going to lose.
Kansas State 4-1 against the spread. Iowa State 2-3. I'm taking the Cats as well. -1 seems like an easy spread for me. I do understand where the bookmakers are coming from. Maddie, as you mentioned, it's at Ames. Crazy things happen when you go to Ames, Iowa, to play football. So let's get into the national schedule here. Let's start with the 11 a.m. time slot. And it got a real doozy in this one. You can see it's behind me. I'm on one of my Tux locks this game right here, kind of giving away my pick. Tennessee, they travel to Baton Rouge, the number 8 Tennessee Volunteers. I didn't realize that LSU was number 25. I thought that
they shouldn't be.
I think that they stink. I don't think that they are good. That tells you why my lock right there. I'll give it away already. Tennessee -3. Hammer that one. Take that one to the bank. Maddie, what do you think about this game?
Well, so LSU, okay, again, I trust teams whose quarterbacks I trust. I just talked about how Hendon Hooker might even be like my top vote getter. He's close to my top vote getter for the Heisman right now. On the other hand, you have Jaden Daniels. Now, if you could maybe trade Jaden Daniels for Jalen Daniels, then maybe LSU would have a shot in this game, but you can't. So instead, you have Jaden Daniels, who I think is a very poor quarterback. I don't think he is a good quarterback playing for LSU. He literally cannot get the ball to Malik Neighbors, Kayshon Butte, any of their passing weapons. That's sad. That's really bad. I don't think Tennessee's defense is great, but they put so much pressure on your offense to score because their offense is going to score kind of at will. That's going to make it hard for this LSU offense. Defensively, LSU's actually been pretty good this year. I think they have a stout defense. Matt House is excelling as a defensive coordinator for LSU. Chiefs fans will know him. He was around in KC. He goes back to the SEC as a DC. He's arguably one of the best already there, and that team is clicking. So that defense is good. It's just Tennessee's offense is so hard to stop. So I'm gonna spoil my pick too. I'm riding with Tennessee in this one. Quarterback play trumps all, and I really don't like Jaden Daniels.
Yeah. Very weird that this is like an 8-25 matchup, and you're looking at it like one of the parts of me thinks, do the bookmakers know something that we don't know? If you see a line like this, it's kind of fishy. You see number 8, number 25, and number 8's only favored by a field goal. You're thinking, okay, that's weird. I know they are going on the road. Maybe if this was a home game for Tennessee, they'd be favored by 6.5, 7 points, maybe. But I understand kind of going on the road to Baton Rouge. Weird kickoff time, 11 a.m. I that's kind of what my thoughts are with the line. Matt House, he was at Kentucky, right? He's at Kentucky, then the Chiefs, and then went to LSU. Good for him. I'm glad to see him out there as a DC getting the defense humming. Maddie, who are your prospects to watch in this matchup?
So for this one, one of my favorites, BJ Ojulari, brother of Azeez Ojulari. Draft fans might remember him coming out of Georgia a couple years ago. I think BJ Ojulari is a better prospect than his brother, a little bit bigger, a little bit longer. Rush is kind of the same, but I think he has a little bit more juice. Across from him, we talked about one of my favorite players for Tennessee on the offensive line a couple weeks ago. He is moved inside. Gerald Mincey, a transfer to the right side. Sorry, Gerald Mincey, a transfer from Florida, has come in to take the left tackle starting job. I think it was because he only played left tackle, but he's now playing left tackle. I'm interested to see. I don't know a lot about him from a draft prospect standpoint yet. He has played a lot of games or a lot of snaps early on for Florida. He's playing for Tennessee. He has yet to allow a quarterback hit this year. So, that's good. So we're going to see how he goes up against this Ali Gay plus BJ Ojulari pass rush for LSU. If LSU has a chance to win, it's by getting to Hooker and getting to him early. So it'll be a good battle between that offensive and defensive line from each team.
Little nugget here before when we already gave away our picks, but LSU was covered in 12 of its last 13 home games in October. An interesting stat there uh, from our friends at DraftKings. But we're both taking Tennessee minus the 3. Tennessee 3-1 against the spread this year. LSU 3-2 against the spread. Got to give those nuggets to you guys if you want to use your own information. I just got to give you the information. You can make your own judgments. But that's where we stand on the noon game. Let's move on to the afternoon game, the 2:30 time slot in the Central Time Zone. Number 11 Utah versus number 18 UCLA. Is this in the Rose Bowl? Correct.
It is.
It's in the Rose Bowl on Fox. You get a 2:30 matchup, which would be 12:30 out there at in California. So they're playing in the afternoon time slot on Fox. This is an interesting game. I think UCLA is a pretty good football team.
This would be my singular game of the week. I like Tennessee, so I like to watch them, but Tennessee versus LSU doesn't quite have the same intrigue as UCLA Utah for me. I think if you had to pick one game this week to watch, it might be TCU Kansas, but this would be right up there with them. UCLA surprised me. They beat our Huskies last week. They looked really good doing so. That offense was humming. I think Chip Kelly really has that offense clicking right now after a few years in the same system. But I'm going to go to UCLA's defense for a second. Latu, a defensive end, has 6 sacks on the year. He medically retired. He was with Washington. He had to medically retire after a neck injury in practice. He unretired as he transferred over to UCLA. He has been cleared to come back this year. He has been an absolute force. The Washington Huskies hadn't allowed a sack all season. And then there in that first half, Latu was dominating their offensive line. He was making it absolutely impossible for them to get into their offensive stuff. He pressured Michael Penix. He sacked him. He was all over the place. He can take over a game. And a Utah team that I don't think has the same level of physicality they have had the past few years to just pound the rock. They do have to drop back. They have a quality quarterback as well in Cam Rising. They will try to air it out a little bit more. I think Latu could be a huge difference maker in this game. He's not my only prospect to watch. I just, shout out a guy coming back from medically retiring and dominating so far this year. And I think this could be another week where you see number 15 for UCLA. He'll move around. He'll rush from a 0 tech, a wide 9, everywhere. And he's just a guy to keep your eye on because he really was a difference maker versus Washington last week.
Jalen Phillips. Where I'm going with this. He medically retired for UCLA. Right. And then he transferred to Miami. Miami's like, hey, you still want to play some football? And he said, yeah, I do. And then he went and he got drafted
to further his music career, actually. And then they coaxed him back into playing football.
That's right. He did do that. I'm pretty sure he might have worn number 15 for UCLA as well. Weird that I knew that and I pulled it off the dome there, but that's kind of the situation seems eerily similar and kind of medically retiring, not necessarily pursuing his music career, but then coming back and playing for another team. Phillips get drafted. He's still playing right now too in the NFL, right? Who's he with?
Did he go to the Dolphins? He either went to I think he went to the Dolphins if I'm not mistaken.
He did.
Yeah.
So. Interesting stories all around. Look at us. I like UCLA. I kind of was impressed with them against Washington. We have a little bit of a Pac-12 heavy slate this week. I don't usually watch a ton of Pac-12 games, but I think that's maybe why I was just so taken aback by how UCLA played last week, because I feel so unfamiliar with the Pac-12 when I watch a Pac-12 game. I'm like, whoa, these teams actually play some pretty decent football.
To their defense, I think Chip had them kind of let off the gas because they were playing such a weak schedule. Nobody really knew what to make of UCLA, and they just kind of looked like they were cruise controlling versus bad teams. I think they had a close game against somebody they should have, housed. But then all of a sudden, Washington comes to town in the Rose Bowl, and they turn it on. And you got that full Chip Kelly experience going on offense. The defense was flying. I think they were coasting to get into league play, and I think everyone kind of got a wake-up call that, UCLA in year 4 under Chip Kelly with half the offense still being there is kind of good.
It's crazy. He's been there for, I think it's 5 years. I think he's been there for 5 years now. He's been there a while. And I remember the other day, I thought, I wonder what Chip Kelly's up to. because it was Chip Kelly offense, remember, was taking over the NFL, and it did not
Hey,
last
listen,
for very long.
Chiefs were running some of the Chip Kelly single back power versus the Bucks. That same side shotgun alignment, running power out of it. They that's a straight up Chip Kelly move right there.
Maybe it still is alive and well in the NFL, and we don't even know it. So, Maddie, let's talk about your prospects to watch. I know you already mentioned one, but what's the matchup that you got here?
The matchup here, this guy against Washington blew me away. Jake Bobo, wide receiver for UCLA, 6'5", like 215 pounds, grad transfer from Duke. Didn't ever get really going with Duke, but he was dominating Washington's very poor secondary, but he was putting the moves on him. I actually thought he was a tight end. I thought it was just another version of Greg Dulcich coming through, but no. He actually plays wide receiver, and he has some shake. He has some movement for a guy that's 6'5", 215. Does he maybe transition to tight end at the NFL? Maybe, but I liked what I saw in the limited experience. This week, he's going up against one of the better cornerbacks in this upcoming draft, Clark Phillips for Utah. I think he was targeted like 13 times last week. Came with 2 or 3 interceptions. One was a pick six. One of the top corners. Smaller though, 5'10", 5'11", 190 pounds. Last year versus UCLA, he played in the slot versus Kyle Phillips and had arguably his worst game of the year. I don't know if he'll follow Bobo around given the size difference, but it's a good matchup of a wide receiver that could be trying to make a name for himself versus a corner who's right there in round one mix. And after what Bobo did last week, I would be surprised to not see Phillips and him match up a few times, especially down in the red zone when you usually want to get your best guy on him.
Utah 4-1 against the spread. UCLA 3-2. I got a good little nugget here about UCLA. They haven't covered. The Bruins have not covered in its last 6 games versus teams from Utah. So teams from Utah they have not covered in their last 6 games, which would I guess be like what BYU, Utah State would be the 3 major FBS teams from there.
Yeah.
I don't think they're playing like Southern Utah because I think Southern Utah is like an FCS school unless they played them in
they might, but
non-con. But the spread is at Utah -3.5. Utah comes on the road, so we got a home dog. We got a home dog alert, Maddie, and I'm going to tell you right now, there's nothing more I love than a home dog. Give me the home dog, UCLA plus the 3.5. I already told you I was already kind of high on those guys, but I'm riding with the Bruins.
This is hard for me. I don't like Utah's football team. The program is great. I love what they do. They've built an excellent program. I just don't like them. I don't root for Utah. I don't find most of their games that appealing. I understand they play this really good brand of defense where everyone's physical and tough, but the lack of like just raw NFL athletes that come from it, the fact that it's always so many moving pieces and guys don't play traditional roles bugs me. The offense is usually just trying to pound the rock until one ball, one run breaks free. It's a little different with Cam Rising. I will give them that, but I have a hard time rooting for Utah. So normally I would go against them. However, I think Utah is the singular type of team that gives UCLA problems, a team that can come in there and body them around, the team that can come in there and be more physical, that can treat them like a younger brother that UCLA often is to some other Pac-12 teams. I will take Utah laying the 3.5, but I will hate myself for it every single second of the game.
Fair. You took Tennessee as well, right?
I did take Tennessee.
Okay, I forgot to write that one down. Okay, that is our slate that we have for our watch schedule. We've ran you through the local games. We've ran you through our watch schedule. The games
we got prime time, buddy. You aren't skipping our primetime game, are you? We got more Pac-12.
You're right.
Baby, and we're staying right down the street. We're not even traveling very far as we hop over from the Rose Bowl to Los Angeles as Washington State Cougars come home to number 6 USC.
The Cougs.
What do you think? What do you think when you see this right here?
My first reaction is USC should roll, but Washington State has been one of those teams that's like, what Washington State team's going to show up? Like, I think that you can say that about a lot of teams in college football, right? Because I think consistency in college football is one of those things that if you could bottle it and sell it, you would be a billionaire. Because consistency is so tough with 18 to 22-year-old kids. Not if you're talking about BYU. You're talking about 30 to 40-year-olds at BYU. So that's an unnecessary jab at BYU for some reason. I don't know
Always
why.
Necessary.
But my first reaction is this game shouldn't be close, but I think it'll be closer than what people think. What do you think that's fair, Maddie?
I think Washington State's good, actually. I
Mm.
don't even know if it's which team shows up necessarily. Like, they were competitive versus Oregon. They arguably should have beat Oregon, who had kind of been
Fair.
rolling everyone up until then, until besides Georgia. I believe it was like a late touchdown followed by a 2-point conversion that I think there was an obvious hold on that would have changed like the last bit of the game, and then a pick six
Yeah,
that came
Texas is
after that
bad.
from Cam Ward. It's like, and then so the game ended up being a 3-point game that 2 minutes before that, it was actually a 2-score game. But 2 minutes before that, Washington State was in control. So, right. So like, it was a close game is all I'm trying to say. I think it's a good game. Cam Ward versus Caleb Williams. That's a quarterback battle I'm here for, baby. I think Cam Ward's been good. He's been a lot of fun. I'm super excited for this one. I think Oregon State played USC very close, made them earn it. Now that was on the road, but they still made them earn it. I think Washington State's better than Oregon State. Again, quarterback play. I think Washington State has a quarterback that can at least put enough pressure on USC's defense to force them to play well. If Cam Ward can avoid turnovers, that's the only way the USC defense has been surviving. So this could be a little bit of a high scoring game, kind of like the Oregon-Washington State game was, but it should be a good one. Prospects to watch. I don't have specific prospects that we haven't already talked about yet, but Ron Stone Jr. is a defensive end for Washington State. He was really good last year. This year, he's in a little bit more of a rotation. And you got a set of tackles, Cortland Ford and Jonah Monheim for USC. I don't know if either one are going to come out this year for sure, but if they wanted to, they could. I imagine Lincoln will be able to keep one or both of them to stay, but that could be a fun matchup that's different than just watching these two quarterbacks go at it.
Yeah, I think so too. Ron Stone, very good name as a defensive end, right? Yeah, as a defensive end, Ron Stone, incredible. I think. Looking at the line here, it's 13 points in favor of the Trojans. Maddie, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, Cougs all day. Cougs aren't losing this one by more than 30. I think it'll be close. USC might still win, but I think Cougs getting 13 points is a pretty easy one for me, even if it's a garbage time cover. I don't think USC's defense is going to stop a team unless they're forcing turnovers. And I think Washington State can manufacture enough offense to get it the worst case scenario, garbage time points to get within 13.
13 is a lot of points. Big numbers scare me. If you listen to this program, you know that big numbers scare me, especially in like conference games, and especially in a conference like the Pac-12 where everything is kind of so close. USC should be the best team in this conference. They should probably win the conference title. 13 points is a lot. I just found this stat too as you were talking, Maddie. Washington State has covered the spread in each of its last 8 games in October. So that's a full like 2 months worth of 2 years,
Whew.
2 months worth of games they've covered. 13 points is a big one. You talked myself into it. You talked me into it. You didn't talk myself. You talked me into it.
Go.
I'm gonna go with Wazoo as well.
Right in the
and
Cougs.
13 points. I'm taking the Cougs. Taking the Cougs. All right, let's get into the wild card games, Maddie. I'm going to talk about another Cougs team. This is my wild card game. The BYU Cougs will take on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. This is a neutral site game. This is taking place at Allegiant Stadium. I didn't know that until like we started doing the prep for this podcast. I was like, oh, I didn't know that they had a neutral site game on the schedule. This is 7:30 on the NBC.
What could go wrong with Catholics and Mormons in Sin City,
Vegas.
baby?
In Vegas, yeah. Just great. It's going to be on obviously NBC Peacock just because of Notre Dame, and they have that exclusive rights deal. Everything to love there. I'm gonna talk about the line, talk about the spread, some of the nuggets that I found about this game, Maddie. Before you talk about some of the prospects in this game to watch. An interesting one that I found. I went back and I looked at neutral site games this season. There's been a total of 7 neutral site games played in like FBS, right? The favorites are 4-3 in those games, and neutral site games. Interesting. There was, you could say 3-3-1, depending on what line that you had with the Texas A&M and Arkansas game. That could have been a push. So pretty even, pretty straight up even on that. And here's an interesting one. Notre Dame has covered in each of its last 6 games as a favorite versus an AP ranked team. So covering each of their last 6 games as a favorite versus a ranked team. Notre Dame obviously not ranked. They're going up against number 16 BYU. The line, Notre Dame's favored at 3.5 points. Against a better, as the AP poll is saying, BYU is the better team than Notre Dame. The bookmakers in Vegas are saying, Notre Dame is the better team by more than 3.5 points. So, Maddie, before I give my pick, I would like for you to talk about some of the prospects in this game.
Yeah. So Isaiah Foskey is a defensive end for Notre Dame. He's kind of next in line in what is this like every other year Notre Dame is going to send out a quality pass rusher. He's got probably more shine than most of them do coming into this final season. He's pushing to be in the first round. Across from him is a guy I think we talked about earlier this year a little bit, Blake Freeland, an offensive tackle. He came in as a 3-star athlete. They got him working at tackle. He has been better and better each year. I think he's a better prospect than I'm going to draw a blank on the last offensive tackle's name that went to Carolina right now. But their last left tackle prospect just came out a couple years ago who was like 26. Blake Freeland's better. He's their best offensive line prospect that BYU has had in a couple years. Him versus Isaiah Foskey. I don't know if it's going to say that decides this game, but I think it could go a long way in allowing BYU's offense to operate, actually throw the ball, give Jaron Hall a chance to drop back and throw the ball without being under pressure every single play. Both defenses should be better than the opposing offenses, so it might be an ugly one, but I think that Freeland has a chance to at least buy some extra time if he can keep Notre Dame's best pass rusher at bay for a little while.
Was it Brady Christensen?
Brady Christensen, yes.
There we go. We're cooking.
Pretty sure Freeland played right tackle. Christensen played left. As a freshman, he played right tackle.
Wow. Like I mentioned, Notre Dame minus 3.5. If you can see over my shoulder, I have a lock over there. One of Tuck's locks is BYU plus 150. That means I'm taking the Cougs and the points. I'm also putting a little bit of money on that, money on the money line. Go ahead and take that. So, Maddie, I guess you don't pick this game. So what's your
No, I'm saving me from myself. So I don't have to pick this game, but mine, buddy, this isn't quite a sickos play, but we're butting up next door. Iowa versus Illinois in Champaign, Illinois, baby. We are going as Big Ten as we can get. Night game in Illinois, 7:30 p.m. on only the Big Ten Network. The Hawkeyes take on the Fighting Illini. This game is going to be physical. It's going to be slow, but also be over really fast. It's going to be gross. There's going to be a total yards over under of like 216 or between both teams. And it's going to be everything you could ever want. This is the only time I'm advocating for watching Iowa football this year. It's the only time I'll do it. Here's why. Illinois just out Wisconsin and beat them.
Yeah.
Can they do that to Iowa next? Can they put Iowa's coaching like royalty on the hot seat like they just got Paul Chryst fired for Wisconsin? If Illinois comes out and holds Iowa to 9 points, runs all over them like they did Wisconsin, just out physicals them, is there any way that Ferentz can keep his job or at least not have to try to make some move? Imagine back-to-back weeks, the Illini go full Big Ten West and get 2 coaches fired that live and breathe off of defense and running the ball through their run game and defense. I am so here for this. Prospect-wise, Jack Campbell, linebacker for Iowa, tackle machine, didn't have his greatest game last week, as Blake Corum made him look silly a couple times in the open field. He's going up against another really good running back. Chase Brown for Illinois has been the best running back in college football this year, and Illinois rides on his back 24/7 every single game. This is it. If he comes out, Jack Campbell can't slow down Chase Brown. Chase Brown gets loose a little bit. He goes for over 100 yards yet again, scores once or twice. I don't think Iowa's offense can match, and that leads us into the whole concept of Illinois getting back-to-back Big Ten coaches fired that have been with their program for almost a decade, each one of them. I am so here for this. Do you have any takes on this game? How much would I have to pay you to tune in and watch this?
Oh, you know me, I don't like Big Ten football. I tune out of the Big Ten as soon as like non-conference gets done, and as pretty much as like when they play the fun teams. There's always like a MAC team that Big Ten teams will play, and like the MAC team makes it relatively close, and you're just like, oh, That's kind of fun. Yeah, I don't know if they're. I don't know. I can't tell you a number right now of what it would take, but this is definitely not going to be a game that I am going to throw on, especially when you got the night game that we talked about already with Washington State and USC.
Sure.
But
I get it.
Yeah.
I normally would avoid too. I just think the hilarity of Illinois becoming the most physical, best defense and running football team and getting to prove it back-to-back weeks is too good, too rich for me to pass up. Illinois is favored by 3.5. If you can't tell by spoiling this, I'm taking Illinois. I will never take Iowa. I don't trust that offense to score 6 points. I don't trust that offense to score 3 points. Give me the Fighting Illini to go back-to-back wins against Wisconsin and Iowa. Get 2 coaches fired. I'm calling it now. Get 2 coaches or at least 2 coordinators fired because of what Illinois does. So yeah, I'll take Illinois laying the 3.5 in this one. I don't have any fun betting trends or lines or anything for this other than the fact that Chase Brown, this isn't betting, is just the best running back going in college football right now. I don't think Iowa can keep up with him. That's all there is to it.
I would say Sean Tucker. I like Sean Tucker.
Fair.
Maybe because we share the same name.
Bijan Robinson's pretty good. Zach, there's a lot of good running backs. Just Chase Brown has been, for what he's been asked to do and be in the entire offense for Illinois, because let's face it, their offense also isn't good. He is doing everything for them. I think he's the leading rusher probably in college right now, or he's got to be very close to it. I think he's been very good, and they will give him a lot of carries. Oh, yeah, he's already got 733 yards.
Whoa. Would not have guessed that. I was trying to find a stat, just kind of a little trend about this game. Couldn't find anything about this game. So I'm glad that you're picking it and not me. So, Maddie, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
I think we've got enough. We got 56 minutes deep right now. Thank you guys for joining us. Listen, this is a Pac-12 weekend, baby. This is the Pac-12 weekend. So let's get it. California, West Coast, Oregon's. Let's have some fun with the Pac-12 before they completely dissolve. We only got 2 more years of enjoying this conference, and they've been fun this year. They've actively been fun as they're folding. They're going down swinging. So shout out Pac-12. You probably won't be around long enough to really appreciate it, but we're here for you at least this weekend.
Here for a good time, not a long time. But we are here for a long time on KCSNU kickoff, taking you up till game day. Hopefully, giving you some of those good picks leading into the college football weekend. So for Matt Lane, I'm Tucker Franklin. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the KCSNU YouTube channel if you are a fan of the Missouri Tigers, the Kansas Jayhawks, or the Kansas State Wildcats. We got content for you all week leading up to the games. So once again, thank you for watching, and we will talk to you next week.
W's up.